everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, we have a study participant from the NYU psilocybin studies, and he just kind of wanted to share his personal, experience as being a participant in the research, and it's pretty fun. This is, I don't think we've had anybody from the NYU trials or team on the show yet, though we would love to have some of the team members join us. Whenever you're ready, just let us know. So yeah, this is a really interesting episode for us. I really appreciated it. It's a firsthand testimony of somebody in the trials, and this is doing psychedelics in New York City. So it's a really different kind of scenario than we usually hear of. So I hope you like this episode. It was really fun. I really appreciate Jon coming on to discuss all this and really dig in. And I think that's really it for the intro on this one. But if you have any comments, we have ongoing conversation on the Facebook group. Just search Psychedelics Today group on Facebook and you'll find it, and apply, and we'll let you in. Turnaround's a few days typically to get in there. What else? Yeah, so onward. Or you could email us, psychedelicstoday@gmail.com. If you want our Proton mail or something secure, just email us and we can shift over to something more secure. So yeah, this episode was brought to you by Audible. You can get a free trial and support our show, a free month trial and a free audiobook over at audibletrial.com/psychedelics today. We would really appreciate you doing that. You can cancel your subscription at the end of the month. It's okay. Anybody that signs up and tries it out helps the show. There's tons of great psychedelic books up there, stuff on Terence McKenna, Tim Leary, clinical stuff. There's also stuff by Jim Fadiman, like the Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, and much more. So audiobooks, if you're into podcasts, are amazing. They help you get more depth on a lot of this information and help round out your experience and knowledge and learning. So yeah, again, check that out, audibletrial.com/psychedelics today. The app is great, and there's some really cool freebies that come along with the trial. Next is Onnit, ONNIT.com. You can get 10% off your order by using the code PSY today. There's a lot of great stuff up there, from like mushroom supplements to various amino acids, proteins, drinks like coffee, and really cool kind of smart drinks, kind of like chai with other stuff embedded in there that's really helpful and delicious. I've been using their stuff for years and love it. Haven't really bought something from them I didn't like yet. I actually have a coffee cup from them with Socrates on it. It's really cool. What is the quote? Let he who wants to move others first move himself. It's pretty meaningful and helpful. And yeah, I get to see it all the time. I think I drink out of it at least once a week now, and I've had it for maybe 4 years. So again, if you want to help us out, check out what they've got. If you like anything, use our code and you can save a little bit. Works on everything but fitness equipment. PSY today. And what else is going on in our world? I'm recording this intro on the 7th of February. Probably get this in just a couple days. And on Saturday, I'm running a breathwork workshop. It's all sold out. It's really cool. Kyle and I kicked off just yesterday both editions of our clinicians and therapists training. It's called Navigating Psychedelics for Therapists and Clinicians, and it's really fun. We did an edition at around 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern time to help allow folks from Europe join us and people with different schedules. And then we did one that starts off at around 7 p.m. Eastern. And that was really fun too. So both editions were fantastic. Really excited. It's an 8-week course, both of which were sold out. If you're interested, you can go over to psychedeliceducationcenter.com and check out the class and get on the wait list for our next edition. We don't have any dates to share yet for the next set of courses, but we should have those up pretty soon. In the next couple weeks, we'll have that stuff public. If you want to help us out, and we'd really appreciate it, please jump over on the podcast app and leave us a review, or over on Spotify. Just share it around to some friends that might find it interesting. If you found an episode that might be relevant to a friend, maybe take that risk and share it. We'd really appreciate it. And I think that's it for now. This is Joe Moore signing off, and we'll see you on the other side. Enjoy this episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, we have Jon. I already blew it. What was your last name again?
Serenity.
Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Cool. So we got connected because you reached out and let me know that you were a recent study participant at the NYU psilocybin trial facility, and you went in for alcohol use disorder. That's right?
That's correct. Yep.
Cool. And I just found out how recent your sessions were, which is really cool. August and September. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got you kind of hot off the tails of that, So maybe getting into this, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself generally before or like what was going on for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just cool. Background, based in New York, father of two kids, spent a lot of my life and still some of my life in nightlife DJing and always kind of around alcohol. Kind of noticed, I have two kids, they're 5 and 8, and noticed a lot of times reaching for beer before even playing with them, and just didn't feel right about a lot of stuff. And I found out about the study at NYU, and kind of I've always been interested in psychedelic therapy. Not something I've partaken in on the therapeutic side, and really actually came across a study as recommended by someone at a Holotropic Breathwork Retreat. Kind of that's where it's taken me.
That's really cool. What state were you in for the Breathwork Retreat?
New York.
New York State. Cool.
It was in New York City. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's great. I'm really just happy to hear that people are exploring breathwork in the city. We're hoping to host some down there eventually, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's great down here. I mean, the ones I've attended 2 now. We're both Groff certified trainers, and just a really good container, really good space. It's always interesting though in New York City, like you have this wide open experience, and then you walk out into the middle of New York City, and it's kind of intense. That's not always the most ideal, but otherwise the space itself is great, and the facilitators are phenomenal.
Cool. Well, that's also interesting. Like you're doing the trials at NYU, you walk outside, it's probably a little similar too. Like you get this full day.
Yeah. I mean, there's a good. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it. There's a good period of come down before you're even allowed to leave. Which definitely helps. But yeah, there is you walk out of that, you wish you were in a little more nature than the city, but you make do with what you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's still plenty of psychedelic use in the city. So, okay. So were you going to holotropic breathwork just to explore stuff, or were you looking to like, change your drinking behavior, or what was going on that made you want to do breathwork?
Yeah, so the breath work, funnily enough, so I've kind of always had a little bit of, I've always wanted to explore the psychedelic side of things. Michael Pollan's book obviously helped push kind of some of that, and following him a little bit, he had always said if you want to find kind of a guide, usually the holotropic breathwork community is kind of traveling in the same circle, and it's a good place to go. So honestly, I went to the holotropic breath work really not expecting anything to come out of the breath work, more of just hey, I'm hoping to be able to find someone who could direct me towards a guide. Long story short, the breath work was extremely, extremely intense. It was a very profound experience. And on top of that, I met someone who happened to be in the exact same program, or the exact same trial at NYU as the one I attended. And she recommended it to me, and I kind of took it from there.
Well, that's awesome. That's great. And did you submit your information to NYU like via email, or was it through like clinicaltrials.gov or something like that?
So I had found the study online, and then I emailed the research assistants there. And then they call you with a bunch of qualifying questions, your drug history, your health history, and then ultimately kind of your drinking history. There has to be a certain amount that you drank in the last 30 days in order to qualify, and then also a desire to reduce your alcohol intake. And once you hit all those, you meet the first hurdle, and then you come in and you meet the actual therapist, and they put me through a full physical, blood work, and a bunch of medical tests, I guess, just to make sure that you're physically qualified. And then once you get through that, then there's a bunch of therapy sessions, and then it goes into the dosing sessions.
That's great. And well, I guess to rewind, it sounds like you were, like, I think there's different gradients of drinkers, right? Like I've seen all sorts of points on the spectrum, from like near suicidal to like, I'm just going to drink 8 beers a day and it's no problem kind of thing. Well, theoretically, no problem.
Yeah.
It sneaks up on you. So you say you're more in that like 6 to 8 beers kind of camp, or?
Yeah. And for me, it even wasn't every day. And actually it was, I don't want to kind of belittle what the drinking was. It's easy to say, it wasn't a problem. For me, more of the issue was just alcohol was becoming more of a crutch for me. Relying on like bad day at work or just stress about stuff. I needed to fall asleep. My problem also didn't help that I was kind of a little bit of a craft beer nerd, and you don't realize when you're drinking 8% beers, like until they actually lay down and point out what you're actually drinking. It was funny because when I did my assessment, I was like, I had 3 drinks yesterday, and they're like, well, what did you drink? And when I laid out, it was 3 16-ounce 8% beers. They were like, well, that's actually more like 5 drinks or 6 drinks. You didn't really have 3 drinks. And that was really an eye-opener for me. And for me, it was really just, again, with my kids and stuff, I was coming home and never neglecting the kids, but I felt like I wasn't being as good of a dad or a husband as I could be.
Right.
I wanted to see what life would be like without it for a little while. And that's what really drove me there.
Well, that's really cool.
Definitely not on the other side of the spectrum.
Right. And I live in Colorado, so I see that kind of behavior all the time. Right. And it's, it doesn't on the surface appear problematic as an outsider, but like that kind of thing adds up, especially if you're paying full price for these things that are like kind of expensive, especially probably in the city. And then, like the 8% thing is pretty intense, and that's really common too. It's like, okay, so you said, yes, I had 2 beers, but what is the equivalent alcohol? I started doing this weird math in my head recently based on a Hamilton Pharmacopoeia episode, and I think it was his show. But just thinking about like the pure milligrams or grams of molecule consumed. Yeah. Like if it's 8% of a huge cup, like that's a substantial amount of drug. And that, it's got to be pretty tough on your body. So like, sleeping, dreaming, healing, all that kind of stuff has to be a little impacted. Yeah. And relationships too, for sure. Cause I've seen plenty of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, how did those initial kind of sessions go for you without drugs? Like the prep sessions, was that interesting or like hard?
Yeah, it was really interesting. A little difficult. I've had some therapy in my past. Nothing crazy. Seen a therapist here or there. I had to set a pretty big intention that I was going to be very open with the therapist. They actually give you the option if they could record or not. And I had actually asked them to not record my sessions just from a way of, I want to be as open as I can be. There were 2 therapists who led the group, and they were both great. And it took a little while to get comfortable, but I probably had, 6 or 7 sessions before the first dosing. And they definitely geared a lot of it towards your drinking as well. So there's definitely, there's an intention that you're going to have this psychedelic session, but where we are going towards limiting your drinking. So it does focus a lot on the drinking, but it's a wide open, like 2-hour session once a week for like 6 or 7 weeks.
6 or 7 weeks, yeah. That's pretty substantial. And did they follow this kind of model of having a male and female present the whole time?
They did.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So you had a pair. Yeah. Okay. And they were there for the therapy sessions and the dosing sessions both?
Yes. Yep. They were there for everything.
That's really cool. Wow.
And then there was also a team of research assistants who would do kind of more of just your timeline and go through kind of your timeline drinking and physical assessments alongside everything.
Right. That's cool. Okay. Did it feel safe or risky at all? Like it felt like it was a pretty safe thing to do because you're in a nice hospital or research environment?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was at no point was I remotely like concerned about my health, and I'll say also the thing that helped me from a mental perspective too is my wife knew I was going down this path and I wanted some sort of psychedelic guided session, and she was a little concerned if it was going to be an underground type session. So knowing I wasn't concerned about that, but knowing that I'm in this very safe environment and she's not concerned made myself even more comfortable about all of it.
Yeah, that's got to be huge. If your partner's really freaked out, like that can't help your set going in. Yeah. That's really tough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So cool. Having that kind of support would really make a difference for sure. I've certainly seen people like not really sure about their intimate relationships, are going to be accepting, and that's always an issue. And it's a hard thing to be in. Like if you really want this stuff and your partner's not down, like what do you do? It's like I don't know. Slowly have the conversation over years, I guess, but hopefully that's not too bad. But
I mean, it's luckily it's something I've been talking about for a very, very long time.
Cool.
So it wasn't like a blindsided conversation. And, the open conversation too was like, look, I'm not doing this to have a good time for 8 hours. I'm doing this because I feel like it's an opportunity to make myself a better person, a better father, a better husband. There's a clear goal for me out of this. And she understood that and was very open to it. So, but again, like knowing that it was in such a safe environment made everyone a lot more comfortable.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Now, what did it feel like the morning of or the night before your first dosing session? Were you a little nervous or were you just excited?
Well, my trial was double blind.
Okay.
So there was this, like, as much as you want to say you're not, you're trying to set your intention and have your mindset in the right place. Honestly, the biggest anxiety for me was, am I going to get psilocybin or am I going to get Benadryl?
Right.
And that was really like on my first dosing was heavily on my mind. Right. Once I got in the room, I actually somehow was able to set this intention even before I took the medicine of like, all right, you're going to be here for 8 hours without your phone, with eye shades on. And worst thing is it's going to be a big dose of Benadryl. And in 6 months, you're going to get the psilocybin anyway. So let's just make the best of this no matter what. But my biggest anxiety leading up to it was just, what am I going to get? And even that was a big undertone leading all the way up to my first session. I'll point out, like, the way this particular trial worked was whatever you got on your first session, you would have a second dosing 4 weeks later, and you were going to get the same medicine, whatever it was. And then 6 months later, you have a third dosing, which is guaranteed psilocybin. So you're either going to get 1 or 3 doses of psilocybin in the trial.
Well, that's helpful. I've heard from a number of people that it's the worst thing in the world if you're just getting Benadryl.
I could imagine. I can tell you my first dose, I thought that's what I got. It took a little while to hit, and I was super drowsy. Right. And it wasn't until I got up to use the bathroom, I was like, wait a second. Benadryl doesn't do this to you.
Right. So what was that kind of sensation for you?
My first session, before I put the eye shades on, was very visual. I had your stereotypical psychedelic, like, and the room, I'll point out, the room is great. It's designed for this. You don't feel like you're in a hospital. They have a lot of like psychedelic books in the room and imagery on the wall. And when I got up to use the restroom, because I was like, okay, I think I have Benadryl, but I'm going to put the eye shades on before I go in. I'm going to use the bathroom. When I got up, I looked at the tapestry on the rug, and it was very active. It's like, all right, well, if this is Benadryl, I'm going to start using more Benadryl.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So, was there any kind of like crazy emotional stuff happening at the beginning, or did that take time to kind of come to the surface for you?
Um, my first my first dosing was actually very it was very physical early on. Like I had a lot of physical sensations in my body. Nothing uncomfortable. Like actually just felt really good. But I put the eye shades on very very early. And that session for me wasn't incredibly emotional. It was actually very difficult. There was a lot of imagery, and just it was just a very very visual experience with the eye shades on, that I was attempting to process while I was going through it.
Right.
Which the therapists were great with me, like trying to comfort me, like now's not the time to process what's going on. I just had I had a very for about 3 months earlier was my first holotropic breathwork retreat, and that was an extremely powerful time for me. I have a cousin of mine, Seth, who's based in Texas, who I've actually never met before. And about 5 days before the breathwork retreat, he was shot. Um, he wasn't killed, but he's still kind of in a bad medical state. And going into that breathwork retreat, felt a lot of my uncle's pain, and it was just a very very physical, visceral. Like I literally took on all my uncle's pain for watching his grandson go through this. And I wanted Seth to come through to me on my journey, and he never did. And it was just very, I was trying to figure it all out. It became very, like I was in an underwater world. I had mentioned earlier, I have kids. I have two little boys, Stephen and Nicholas, and they were kind of my guides on this journey. And I kept going deep underwater, hoping to find something related to Seth. And they both kept taking me up to this pirate ship. Like, Daddy, come play on the pirate ship, come play on the pirate ship. And I would go up to the pirate ship with my boys, and then, all right, I don't know how much time I have left of this. Daddy has work to do. We have to go back down. We kept going down, and I kept seeing the same like underwater world, and I couldn't make any sense of it. I couldn't make sense, and they just kept pulling me back up to this pirate ship. Long story short, I came home that day, and my younger son Nicholas greeted me at the door, and I was exhausted. It was just very very difficult day for me. I walked in the door, and my younger son says, "Daddy, you want to play Power Rangers?" I don't know if you remember the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's as bad now as it was when we were kids. And he's like, "Daddy, I'll be the red Power Ranger. You be the pirate." And I was just like, "Wait, what? There's no pirates in the Power Rangers." And nobody had known about my journey. And my wife just casually from the other room was like, "Oh, there was a new episode he's been watching all day today with the Power Rangers fighting these pirates." Oh man! And it took me up until not that long ago, and actually it hit me in a float tank session where I was like arbitrarily not even thinking about it. And I was like, "Wait a minute! The message from that journey was just to play more." Like I kept wanting to go down and do more work, and I've been on kind of this whole self journey, and kind of I think the message from that medicine that day was, hey, just it's okay to play. It's okay to enjoy life and do these things. And that message was coming from my kids, and I wish I would have understood that message while I was in the midst of the journey, because I think I would have been able to enjoy it more. Like I said, it was just really, really, the actual day was very, very difficult for me because I kept feeling like there was something under that water that I wasn't able to get to because my kids wanted to play
Right.
up on the pirate ship with me. I'll also point out that session was a 25 milligram dose. So I guess that equates to like a little over 4 grams. So a big dose, but also one. I mean, I took it at 9 a.m. and by 12:30, I was done. Like there was not even a come down. It just like abruptly ended. And you stay you can't leave the room before 5 p.m. So you're committed to be in the room from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that 12:30 to 5 o'clock was rough. It was rough because at some points you want to leave. But you're sitting there, and the therapists are great. They're very, if you want to talk, they will talk. If you don't want to talk, it's your time. The only thing that kind of, and I've spoken to them about this, and just because it's part of a trial, is they have a set playlist. So you're kind of at the whim of their music. I pointed out during the session, there were a couple of songs that reminded me of church. And I am not a Catholic. It was just growing up I was, and it brought a lot of that back to me. And I was like, when is this song going to end? I don't want to hear this. And then you're in the room, and I was pretty open. I was very talkative. Because I was like, what happened? What just happened? And then
after
that session
the experience,
ends,
you were very talkative.
Yeah. Even during, I was pretty. I do recall just like saying to the therapist, like, my sons keep pulling me up to this pirate ship. They want to play, but I know I need to go back under and do work. I know I need to go do work. And they were like, you have to do what your heart feels right. Don't force anything here. And I was trying again, like everything. Nothing connected. Whereas, very earlier I had the breath work and it was just a very clear. I felt my uncle's pain. I knew exactly what was happening. Like literally within 10 minutes of breathing, I was like, whoa, this hit me and I know what's going on. With the psilocybin, I couldn't understand it. It was very, very just bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm. And it's weird when you can't grasp it. It's like a very strange dream. You're just like, what on earth? I stopped eating cannabis every night to go to bed recently, and my dreams are just intense, and it's like it's funny to get reacquainted with them again.
It's more intense now since you stopped the
It's just something.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's a weird phenomenon that's been happening for me. I think a lot of people have that. But anyway, you're an interesting candidate for this project, this clinical trial, because of your background with holotropic breathwork and flotation and being in the nightlife scene for a long time. You were were you full-time DJ?
No,
just kind of like hanging out and doing it whenever.
Yeah, but regularly, once or twice a month.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, like, you had an interesting background going in relative to, I think, a lot of people in that you've seen a lot of people in these states. Probably you've been curious about it for a long time, and you got active through breath work and flow tanks. To get more accustomed with your mind. A lot of people would go in really, really blank slate. Just sitcom bender for 2 weeks and then jump right in.
I mean, I think there's something to be said for both ends of it too. I mean, I regularly meditate, I go through all that, but I also read probably more than I should have about kind of the psychedelic experience. Like a lot of stuff. I had a moment in my first journey where I felt like it was a rebirth. And then I think just my rational mind kicked in saying, you were born through a C-section. Like, which obviously I know now, but like doesn't really mean anything in the midst of that journey. But I convinced myself, like, this is just something you're convincing your mind that you read this is someone else's experience that you read about. You're not really experiencing this. And I kind of was able to push it away, and I may have missed out on something there. I think I read a little too much and got myself a little too worked up about it. That was for the first dose.
You were okay. So that's an interesting topic to bring up. It's very Groffian, obviously, because it's pretty core to the breathwork lectures.
I had read it in When the Impossible Happens. That's where it was kind of stuck in my head from.
And that's a weird one. A lot of people in breathwork workshops do get caught up in it, and then maybe they don't get back to where they want to be until a couple more sessions later because, they just like grabbed onto that thing as opposed to like, I don't know, just experienced it maybe. I don't know. How do you wish you played that different in your experience?
I wish I hadn't had that bit of my rational mind kick in and just say, you were born through a C-section, so this can't be your rebirth. And somehow, like literally, once I had that thought, I pushed it away. And, maybe it was my rebirth. Maybe it was someone else's rebirth. Like it could have been any number of things. I just literally had this quick moment where I convinced myself, you read about someone else's experience. That's what's happening now. This isn't you. And somehow it literally just ended pretty abruptly. And I had a lot happen in that first journey. I mean, I've mentioned a lot about the underwater stuff and the pirate ship with my son. There was just a ton of very intense imagery that I was trying to make sense of it all. It was very geometric, very like Aztec. It was a lot of just, I couldn't understand it. And I was really, really, I don't think I fully pushed through. I had one foot in each world, and I was just like, I want to understand what this means, but it doesn't make any sense, as opposed to just kind of being like, let's see where this takes me, and being more open to it. What was great about that, though, is the therapists they take a ton of notes, and they actually shared their notes with me, which is cool. And we have an integration session. Then it's great. And there's a 2-hour integration session the very next day. So you're back and seeing them at 9 o'clock in the morning, so they could go through kind of your entire experience, which I didn't think was going to be as important as it turned out to be. It was really helpful.
Right. Well, that's cool. And how did this second session go? Was that a similar dosage and similar experience?
No, I increased the dosage the second time to 40 milligrams.
And that was your choice?
So that was my choice. I had the choice of keeping it at the same dose. I could have done, I think 30, 35, or 40 was the most you could do. And I went with the 40. Now, again, to be clear, it's double blind. So it could have been, had it been Benadryl and I just said, I want the bigger dose, they would have just given a bigger dose of Benadryl. Based on my experience, definitely less Benadryl. But yeah, I had the choice there. And then right after your first session, you have to fill out it was a lot of questions, like a very intense questionnaire. And they take your blood pressure throughout the entire day. And part of the therapy and kind of where your blood work is, they let you know if you're even a candidate, A, to increase, and B, if you are to increase, where you could go to. The most they will do for anyone is 40 milligrams. And I was lucky enough to qualify for it. And just kind of it was pretty funny. After my first dose, I came in the next day, and the first thing I said to the therapist was like, 4 weeks is too soon. Like, I want more time. Like, I want to be able to try to process some of this. I want to figure out what happened. Like, 4 weeks feels like it's around the corner. Like, we're not giving this any time to breathe. And they're great with you. They're very open, and they're like, look, we totally get where you're coming from, and you're not required to do anything. If you don't want to continue, you don't have to continue. But this is a trial, and if you don't do it in the 4 weeks, then you're just opting out of the trial. And I knew that if I did that, I would always regret it. So I also said, you know what? I felt like I maybe could have used a little bit more of the medicine, and it would have helped me push through a little bit more. So let's increase it and kind of see what happens. And that's what I did.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Now, going in on medicine day for the second time, were you a little more amplified that time around? Because you kind of knew it was a drug session.
Yeah, that was a huge. It was such a major difference in my mindset going in. Just knowing I had no anxiety. I had anxiety around what's going to happen. Like how's it? I know the one thing I will say, kind of the reading of everything helped, is like no two sessions are the same. So I had a very open, like, okay, you're going to get more of the medicine. It's going to be nothing like your last session. Let's just, just try to be more open to whatever happens, kind of happens. And that definitely helped a ton on the second day.
Good. That's helpful. Yeah. It's, especially if you've only had a handful. I think they've, theoretically, at like around 100 sessions, you could probably start having some strange repeats because you still have this latent material you haven't worked through, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the early days, it's there's so much material to get amplified and get out there. So yeah, well, that's cool. And what was day 2 like? So like you ate the medicine, you had the eye fold or eye blind. Jeez.
Yeah.
Eye mask.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the same, the same room. Luckily the playlist was a little different, but although I will say the medicine was so intense the second time, I couldn't even tell you what the music was like.
Right.
my first time that I took the dose, I had fasted before the dose. The second time I had eaten breakfast, and it took a while to hit. I think just the food. And I remember asking the therapist in the room, saying like, has the pharmacist ever screwed up and done psilocybin once and Benadryl the second time? They're like, no, just relax, give it a little time. It's only been 20 minutes. Right. And then it finally hit. And when it hit, it was, I mean, it started very early in the session. I had a lot of the same Aztec imagery. And I had a brief moment. I remember just thinking, oh shit, it's going to be the same thing as the last time. But then I also said, okay, if that's what it is, that's what it is. Let's just go with this and see what happens. And very quickly I had seen like a body being chopped up. And it didn't take very long for me to realize like, that's my body. Wherever I'm going now, I don't need this physical body. And I was very, very quickly in a state of, you're very stereotypical, but it's until you experienced it, it sounds cheesy, but once you experience it, you're like, I'm one with the universe. Love is the most important thing. It was just this incredible moving session where nothing was visual. Nothing happening with the eye shades on was visual. In fact, I took them off quite a bit because I just had this very like open, everything felt like I was connected and I just wanted to be a part of everything. And it was during this session that I actually had remembered, I said it out loud to the therapist. I was just, I had this feeling Seth had come through to me very strongly. And I was just like, Seth, your dad loves you. Your dad loves you. I was like, I've never met his father. I don't even know who his father is. And then it was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm his father. I'm, one with the universe. I'm connected. And I remember, and luckily this is where having the notes is super important. I said to Kelly, one of the therapists, I was like, I want to just note that I'm adopting Seth into my family. Like me, Lauren, Stephen, and Nicholas, we just adopted Seth, and he feels like he's my son now, and everything feels connected. And between sessions too, I should point out a friend of mine who I haven't seen in years had taken his own life, and that became he came through, and I haven't spoken to him in 20 years. But he came through very strongly in a lot of pain. And I felt like I felt his pain, and then I felt like I could release him kind of the other side, and I released him of all his pain that he had done here. And I remember saying it to the therapist, like very vividly. I was like, that feels narcissistic. Like I have this power to do that. Like I just did that. And then I was like, wait a minute, it's not me. I'm connected to everything else. And it was literally just so stark contrast from my first session, which was just painful and like physically painful. I was exhausted after that first session. Everything came so easy the second time. It was just beautiful and just amazing. I remember staring at a banana for about 5 minutes and Kelly saying to me, you want help peeling that? And I was like, no, this thing's alive. We're not doing anything to this banana anytime soon. Like, let the banana live. And that session lasted a while. Like I didn't start to come down until after 2:30. The one thing like I noticed, I was very aware of time, which is contrary to kind of a lot of what I've read and stuff. But I was always just like, how much time do I have left? How much time do I have left? But I came down so smooth and easy. And then my friend Jerry had come to pick me up, and I had this craving for ice cream. So we went and got ice cream together, and you get paid at NYU. It's not a ton of money, but you get like $50 or $100 for each session. And one thing I learned is when the universe gives you a financial incentive for something like that, you end up just buying everyone in the ice cream shop their ice cream. People are like, what the hell's going on? I was like, no, everyone's ice cream's on me. I have to do it. I don't know why, but it's just what I have to do. So it was kind of cool. It was a really, really great experience. And then kind of I've spoken to the therapist and a few of my friends about this. In stark contrast to my first breath work and my first session, which were difficult, but I kind of realized what I needed to do to process it. This one's just like hung out there like, okay, what do I do with this now? Like I had this amazing session. How do I integrate this? What do I do? So that's been interesting for me now.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Cool. And what? So you only had 2 sessions. You haven't had a drink since then. And like,
Yep.
was there any pivotal moment other than that? Your interaction with the universe, or like becoming. You said it really well. Kind of that stereotypical everything is love kind of deal. But
Yeah.
like, was it that you think, or was it something else, or do you have a hypothesis, or like what did it for you?
So I don't know what's done it for me since then. I can tell you, like, leading up to your first session, you have to say you're not going to drink. I think it's for like a week before the first session. And then they ask you between sessions to try to not drink. They don't make it a requirement, but they said, we want to really see if the medicine works. Can you try to not drink for a month? And I did it, and that was really difficult for me. I just wanted to drink really bad. And kind of what's happened since then is I've taken those handcuffs off, and I've basically just said to myself, like, if you want to drink, have a drink. That's I no longer feel like I have anything that tells me I can't drink. The only rule I've set for myself is I won't reactively drink. So that was kind of my issue was, again, rough day at work, and that's when I want to have a drink. So I've kind of just said, that's not going to happen. But if you're going to a wedding, you're going out, again, like, I've DJed a few events, and it's like, if you want to have a drink there, have a drink. You have no restriction. And I've literally just found I just don't crave it. It's just like, and I think I've set a new baseline. I had said this to Kelly. I was like, I feel like I never said I had anxiety. I was always just like, I have like regular, normal human anxiety, but I'm not an anxious person. But now I have this new baseline where I'm just like, holy shit, I had anxiety. I was an anxious person, and now I'm not. And, I said to Kelly, I was like, it's unbelievable what the psilocybin's done. And she was like, well, maybe it was that. And also maybe it's you haven't had a drink for 2 months. And I kind of thought that through, and I was like, okay, maybe that's what it is too. And physically, I just feel better. I'm sleeping better. And what I've noticed now is, aside from the reactive drinking to a bad day, it's a lot of times I'd be out drinking, or I'd be out at either a work event or something, DJing. And I always just felt like I needed a couple of beers to be social, the typical social lubricant. I've just found since these sessions, I'm even more outgoing than I normally was without it. And I'm like, wait a minute, you used to need a couple of beers to loosen up and talk to people. You're loose in talking to people. Why have those 2 beers? You don't need them. So, like, I'm not going to say I'm never going to drink again, but it's been almost 5 months and I haven't had a drink. And I just, again, like I said, I don't feel like I have the handcuffs. If I want to have one, I'll have one. I haven't had a desire. It feels like kind of a waste to do it if you don't want it. I recently had said to someone, it just popped out of my mouth. It was at a work event, and they're like, "You don't drink?" I was like, it's actually kind of the least interesting drug I've ever done. And I was like, and I didn't even plan on saying it. It just popped out, and I was like, wait a minute, it really is. It really is. Like, I don't know, just the way I don't need it, so I haven't had it, and it feels good. It feels good to not drink. And again, I don't know how long that's going to last, but I feel great. I feel less anxiety, and that last session was at the end of September, and then at the beginning of November, I did another breathwork retreat, and everything kind of connected there. It was pretty amazing. Both Seth and my friend had kind of come to me with kind of, it was a reverse of my last psilocybin session where I was feeling all this love coming into me. And it took me a little while to process. And I'm like, wait a minute, are you guys okay? And I was like, well, yeah, idiot. Where do you think all that love that you shot out last time was coming from? It's coming from us. It's this circle. And that was just a beautiful, amazing feeling. And I've kind of committed now. I'm like, okay, you've done a lot of work in the last 3 months. Like, well, let's let all this stuff breathe for a while. I probably don't have another psilocybin session until like April or May. And I've just made a commitment. I'm like, all right, let's just take a break from all the work and kind of let's just try to integrate a lot of this and enjoy life. But I've been I can't quantify it, but I've been so much happier and just way less anxious and just feel so much better. I physically feel better, emotionally feel better. You know, I always thought I was a good dad, but now I'm like, yeah, now I'm that dad that, everyone else kind of looks up to. It's like, it's great. I'm just fully present with my kids, fully present with my wife. I've never been happier. I've never felt better.
That's extraordinary. I think like my one and only ayahuasca session was kind of like that. I just felt like I was walking on sunshine for 6 months plus, and I've only had it once, and it was like just extraordinary. I was years deep in my breathwork journey at that point, but I can definitely relate. So is your session in May part of the trial still?
Yeah, it's still part of the trial. Cool. So the trial, I think it's a 54-week trial. I don't know why, but I don't know why that number's in my head, but I think that's what it is. So yeah, I'll have that in May. I think I have 2 or 3 therapy sessions that lead up to that, and then 2 or 3 therapy sessions after that dosing.
Cool. Are you seeing a therapist now other than?
No.
Cool.
No. It's just been them. I'm not opposed to it, but I feel good. My meditation practice is definitely intensified. A lot of that stuff comes through. I get in the float tanks a lot more, and just I've noticed now since the sessions, like any hot and cold therapy, like anytime I'm in the sauna, or believe it or not, like the most intense sessions are 3 minutes in a cryo chamber. I come out of there and I'm just like, my mind just goes to a blank slate, and a lot of stuff comes back from both of those psilocybin sessions and the breathwork sessions. And I've just kind of made a commitment to continue on that path, and between the meditation, the float tanks, and hot and cold therapy, I feel good.
Yeah, that's excellent. I've not done the ice thing yet or the cryotherapy, but it sounds really intense.
It's cold. It's cold. There's no getting around it. But there's something about like you're just in a frozen minus 220 tank for 3 minutes, and you cannot be worried about anything else. Like your mind goes, you get to a state that I can't get to in 45 minutes of meditation. I get to in 3 minutes in that tank. So aside from the physical benefits, there are definitely like mental benefits that I've found from it.
Yeah, that's great. I do a lot of sauna, and that can get really intense. And that's probably my longest quiet time during the day. But yeah, I think I would like to try some cold stuff. So thanks for the tip on that. But yeah,
no problem.
So meditation, floating, kind of physical stuff, hot, cold. I assume you're working out too. There what other stuff does your integration look like? Practices that make up your whole practice? Anything else? Journaling? Journaling's been really important to me. I do go back to, and I try not to, but I try not to make a regular practice of it, but I do go back to both my notes and the therapist notes from the sessions. I like to kind of keep it, because I start to feel it fading away a little bit. It's a little harder for me to access, whereas 2 months ago, everything was very vivid. I could feel everything. Now it's kind of I feel it slowly going away, but I try to read a little bit on that. Just reading a ton of books is super important to me. Both I've gotten back into fiction again, which has kind of helped open me back up. It's fine. Growing up, I loved Aldous Huxley. Rereading his works now has such a different meaning, and just way more interesting to read. And I loved him before I did any of this. And now it's like, whoa, this stuff is really, really great. And really just honestly, like being around my family, just being as present as I can be with them. That's really been kind of the biggest integration. Electronics and that nonsense. Like I get home, I put my phone in a drawer, and just make sure I'm with my kids for a few hours, and just very, very, very focused with them. There's a lot of stuff that just stuff that used to worry me just doesn't worry me anymore, and
spent a lot of time worrying, like, what happens if I get sick? What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen? It's just like, this is not the end. You're only here a short time, no matter what, whether it's tomorrow or 50 years from now. It's a short time, no matter what. Let's just make the best of it. And really, just for me now, it's like, I learned a lot of these lessons at 40, and I have 2 kids that I'm hoping I can teach these lessons that, a lot earlier. You don't have to have any of that Catholic guilt. Just kind of be able to live life and just be happy the way they are. And I see it in them already. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. I grew up in the Catholic world as well. So I've experienced a lot of that craziness and the guilt, and it's an extraordinary construct. And it's funny that psilocybin can really help. Let's see. So going into your next session, beyond integration, are you gonna? I imagine you're gonna think about it here and there, but be like, okay, this is what I want to work on. Are you gonna bring an intention in, or just see what happens?
I mean, what worked for me on the last session, and I hope to have the similar intention. My intention literally was just be open to whatever happens. Like don't go. It's easy to say that don't go in with any hopes or expectations, but I feel like the less you have on that, and to go back to the breath work, like honestly, that may have been one of my most intense sessions, and I really to this day believe it was so intense because I went there not for the breathwork session. I went there because I'm like, I want to find a guide, and I'll breathe because I'm here, but I don't really think this is going to do anything. So my expectations were so low that it just like hit me. And one other thing that like, and I mentioned this to the therapist too, and I've worked on and I've gotten there, like my last psilocybin session was everything I could have hoped for and wanted from it. So I've had this concern. I had this concern going into breath work, and I had this concern going into the next session of like, what if it's not as good as that session? And I've really spent a lot of time working on myself, like that doesn't negate it. Like I've always had this whatever the last thing was the only thing. And that's not the case anymore. Now it's like, I'm very open to, hey, this could be a really tough trip. It could be completely it's probably going to be completely different. Maybe it won't be what I wanted. But I genuinely believe that like whatever I get out of the session is what I needed. Like I really do believe that. Like whatever's in my subconscious that's like not bubbling up to the surface is going to bubble up, and nothing's going to come up that I can't handle. It may be difficult, but maybe I need that. Maybe I need that difficult experience. So, kind of going back to your question, like really, I as of now, I hope that my intention stays the same of, just be open to whatever the medicine brings up.
There's a lot of really good insight there. That one thing that sticks out for me is the what if time 2 isn't as good as time 1 or whatever, and this idea of like that we know what better could be, right? Like just the way culture kind of drives us, we're not really attuned to ourselves the way perhaps we could be. And
exactly.
Like, so that concern, well, it feels super real. Like it's almost like saying, what if that car repair isn't as cool as this other car repair? It's like your body wants to heal, right? But it's not necessarily like, and it all needs to heal, but some might feel more pleasant or blissful than others or something, and it's hard for us to like get a grip on that, I think, at times. But it's it's your body trying to heal itself. Like this concept of holotropic states, I think, is super helpful.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And I've said this before, and now I think as this last one's starting to integrate, I'm pulling back from that a little bit. But I had said more than once, like, okay, I had these 2 sessions, the holotropic and the first psilocybin, which were really difficult. I'm like, but I knew what to do with it. And this last session was so beautiful. I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. It's so like, I almost welcomed the bad trip. So I'm like, this is just, there's like, it's a painful, and maybe that day is going to come where I don't feel this way. And it probably gets that way on ayahuasca. I haven't gone down that road yet, but I've through all the holotropic and the psilocybin, I always knew that whatever state I was in was going to end. So I never had this fear like this is what I'm going to be. I always knew it was going to end, and I knew like something's coming up that I may need to just work on. So I kind of welcome the quote unquote bad trip, because I think you come out of that and you're just like, okay, there's something clear to work on. Like I said, I had this amazing trip and I was just like, all right, what do I do with this now? But I think the holotropic really brought that back full circle. And now I think I'm more equipped. But, you know, the more you think you're ready for something, that's when something sneaks up on you and kicks you in the ass that you weren't ready for. So
right,
whatever it is, it's I think it's going to be great.
Good. Yeah, it's like trusting that your body's wisdom is going to come forward, especially when you're supported by such excellent facilitators and therapists. So that helps too, for sure. Cool. Well, we're coming up on an hour. I'm wondering if we may have missed anything that you really wanted to share or anything else.
No, I mean, this was, it was definitely great to be able to talk so openly kind of about the experience. And, you know, aside from the therapist and a handful of friends and, you know, my wife, obviously, it's tough to you don't want to open up to too many people about this. And it's tough to keep it in because you want to be able to, and honestly, before the psilocybin, I wasn't like this, but now I want to tell everyone about how great it is. So I appreciate you giving me the platform and, you know, just, you know, the work everyone's doing at NYU and Hopkins and, you know, MAPS and everything across the world. I think this is super important. You know, this is just, these medicines are great. And, you know, I'm talking to the Decriminalized Nature New York guys and, you know, all that stuff that's happening across the country right now is it's great. And I think, you know, whatever can be done to get this stuff legalized in the right manner is very important right now, and society's opening to it, but we definitely need this as a culture. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing, just kind of giving me the opportunity to talk here.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to share the story. It takes a lot of courage to come out and be public about this stuff. So thank you. And I'm glad you're getting connected with some groups out there in New York. It's a state that needs a lot of work. Drug policy in New York is tough. But getting better, hopefully, every day. Cool. So, Jon, I really appreciate your time on the show, and you know, perhaps we can connect again.
Yeah.
And there you have it, Jon from the NYU study, participant, and I hope that was interesting and helpful. I was pretty impressed with that and really enjoyed recording with Jon. So I hope you did too. So if you know somebody that might find this episode interesting, maybe share it around. If you know a friend that, you know, perhaps hasn't really thought about this, but they're in the clinical fields, maybe share it. There's a lot of interesting applications for psychedelics that, you know, aren't clinically approved yet, though perhaps, you know, we want to guess and it's probably coming. So we'll see. But yeah, a lot of your friends might like this stuff. So please do share. If you want to support us, you can check out audibletrial.com/psychedelics today and get a free audiobook and a free month subscription. If you want to check out onnit.com and check out what they've got, you can save 10% using the code PSY today. And there's tons of great food over there and interesting supplements. So check it out. Maybe there's something you like, and anything you buy will help us out over at Psychedelics Today. So I think that's it for now. If you have anything you want to reach out to us about, Psychedelics Today, email at gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Leave us a review somewhere, Facebook or a podcast app or Stitcher or something. And just remember to tell your friends. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Joe Moore signing off.